You can only learn if you fail. The biggest mistake in life that you can do is trying not to make any mistakes. Going out of school and coming into work, there were people asking me to do things that I've never done before. I felt like I kept making mistakes and I was so scared of making mistakes that I ended up being really introverted at work. I didn't really ask for much help. What I learned looking back at that internship, that I missed out on so much opportunities to learn how to code better, to ask more questions, because that way, if I ask more questions, if I do more mistakes, you learn more things. You can only learn if you fail. If you look at all the successful people out there with businesses, they had so many businesses that failed. Every successful artist did so many different things that they failed multiple times in order to end up doing the thing that made them successful. So if you look at them, they failed way more often than the average person, but I think especially because of our school system that constantly tells us like, oh, you could fail in this grade, and we are so scared to fail because we don't want to do the school year again or not be rejected at a college or university or the job that you want to work for. You know, we kind of have this anxiety of failing and the way that we see failure. That's why I think it's so sad that we don't learn or get encouraged by doing mistakes, because if you're in that learning mindset of always thinking, oh, I can still learn from making that mistake, because a lot of times mistakes aren't as serious as we think they are. If you're too scared to make mistakes, and I had a bad driver's teacher and that made me anxious, and because I was anxious, I was driving terrible. Then I had another driver's teacher and she was very understanding, and that way I felt way more comfortable in the environment that I was in, and that way I didn't feel as scared to make mistakes anymore, and that way everything just worked way smoother. It didn't discourage me of being too scared to try again after failing. She encouraged me, and that's why it's so important to be surrounded by the right mentors in your life that kind of have this mentality of pushing you and helping you to reach the next level instead of dragging you down, or like the school system telling you, oh, you failed, making you feel like you're not good enough. I realized after my internship, because I was also always comparing myself to another coworker that was doing the internship as well. Another thing that I learned besides her learning more, because she was asking more questions and asking for more work all the time, well, I was trying to avoid all that stuff. I was like, I just want to do the minimum that they asked me to do so they don't kick me out. But looking back, I didn't learn that much. So when I went to the US for 1 year, there was this one thing that I always wanted to do, and that was volunteer at the shelter as a dog volunteer. Going there, you had to go through so many different kind of like webinars online and so many teachings and lessons and ways and things to complete in order to be able to be a dog volunteer. I had a couple of teachings where I was like walking the dog and struggling, and it was very intimidating for me as well. But this time it was different because it was something that I really wanted to do. I signed up to all the teachings, and there was another girl. She even started before me, and she also wanted to be a dog volunteer and qualify for it. I finished my whole lessons way sooner than she did, and I kept approaching her and be like, you should just ask them if they can put you into the lessons. And she told me that she's waiting for them to walk up to her. And that's another thing, is like sometimes if we feel outside of our comfort zone, we kind of want the situation to happen to us instead of us actively going into that situation of discomfort. It's like it's easier to take a warm shower than to take a cold shower. That's why we choose the warm shower. But at the same time, we tend to miss out on so many opportunities in our life that we could just do if we take action. And I want to use this to encourage you. Even though I made mistakes doing the dog volunteering thing, that helped me learn, that helped me improve the skills or the things that I didn't think about in that specific moment of making that mistakes. But now that I did it, I remember and I know, okay, I'm not going to do it again. Sometimes mistakes happen a couple of times until we realize, okay, we can't do this anymore. Sometimes we're in relationships with people that are not good for us, and sometimes that repeats over and over again until we learn the lesson. We should not be so hard on ourselves of making mistakes, because mistakes help us become a better person. And they help us to learn and understand how things work and how they work for us, because what works for someone else might not work for you. And this whole process in life, it's just about like figuring it out as we go. Making mistakes is a big part of it, and if you try to not make mistakes, you're missing out on so much growth that is way more sad than making the mistakes and feeling bad for making that mistake. I don't know, maybe you got robbed somewhere where it's very obvious to get robbed. Whatever it is, whatever kind of mistake that you make, it's human to make mistakes, and it's so important to make them and be able to grow from them. It's like when you're in that moment or right after, you feel like, I made a mistake. It's so easy to get discouraged and thinking like, oh, I never want to be in that situation again. It's kind of like getting that anxiety of you wanting to get out of that uncomfortable situation. All I can say is like, ask yourself, is this terrible in 10 years from now? Because a lot of times in that moment, in that week, in that month, it might be uncomfortable, but if you look at it from like a longer distance of like a longer time gap, it's not that bad anymore. And those other people, like even if there are people that judge you for making that mistake and they're like, that person is so dumb, that's their way on how their mentality is. And usually people that think like that are not people that are really successful, because really successful people with really successful businesses, they know that you need to make those mistakes in order to grow. And those people with like a limited mindset, they might think or tell you that you're a failure. We should not be as scared of people that judge us, because those people that judge us are usually people that either envy us because they want to live a life, or we have something that they want in their life but they can't have it, or they see that they can't have it. They talk like really negative to you, and don't let that affect you. It's important to know whose opinions to value more and whose opinions to value less. And it's really important that you learn that your opinion about yourself is the most important one in your life. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of you, because they just know a version of you. Someone at work that sees you make a certain mistake, whatever they think to fill the picture of thinking you suck doing everything, that is just us overthinking a situation of making a mistake and thinking, oh no, now that person might think I can't do anything if I make a mistake here. But a good mentor, a good friend, a good coworker, they would totally understand you, and they would also help to comfort you and be like, I already made that mistake when I start working here as well. That's why I'm also so grateful that I'm working at a company right now where people have that mindset where they help you and they encourage you, and they also don't make you feel bad if you make mistakes. And that way I was able to grow way more in a shorter period of time than the longer period of time in the other company that I was working for. Leaving a company can be outside of our comfort zone, even if you don't feel comfortable at that company. Don't forget about all the good things that are going to come after making that mistakes. Like Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots looking back and not the other way around. You can't say, oh, I'm going to make that mistake and that will teach me this lesson. It will just happen, and it's okay to let it happen. You should let it happen, embrace the mistake, and then learn from it and move on. And then it's just a part of your life, but it's not your life. Your life is not a mistake or a failure. It's just a part of that process of becoming the person that you want to become. I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye!